background noise, but you can't hear any of it, right?
Okay.
You can't hear it?
No,
Okay, good.
I
Okay, it
can't
looks
hear
like,
any background. So.
okay, good, cool. Yeah. All right. So we are connecting to X and to Facebook and to YouTube. This is episode number 37. And I saw, uh, that's the name of the show, by the way, episode 037, Julie Dhara Roberts. Um, and so I looked at, because I've been paying attention to the numbers of each show, right? Like the last show I had was impromptu. It was just I wanted to jump on. I felt something coming out. It was show number 36, and these two men showed up. And I was telling Morgan before I went on, I wish I could get some men on. Like I wish I could put an announcement out and say, this is what I want to talk about. And I got on, and two men came on. It was fantastic. But 37 is a 10. And then I saw in my memories after we set the show up that we did a show like 2 years ago on this date, and it was a 10. And then there was another 10, and I can't remember what that was, but it had to do with you. Let me just turn on the Facebook, and then I'll tag you. Um, yeah,
That makes sense.
I think this is
When I
probably the
was getting
earliest show I've.
when I was getting ready for the show myself, I had to like,
Uh-huh.
didn't we talk about this already? Didn't I already have this
You had
conversation
to
with
what?
Todd? Like it's now and the one is perfect because it's all merged. Everything's now. If we're
Right?
doing this at 1 o'clock, my 1 o'clock.
Hang on. Let me just get this right here. Yeah. Julie. There you are. Tagged. Episode number 37, Julie Dhara Roberts. We've probably done about 20 collaborations together. You've educated me over the years on cosmology. Is that what you call it?
Sure.
Yeah. And other things. And it's for me it was a real learning experience because I can speak almost any language. I can, like connect with people, but it was actually as you explained everything, I began to have a greater appreciation because I never really fully stuck with astrology. I was like, yeah, that sounds a bit too like I don't have control or whatever. But you explained that the planets and the stars uh, each carry a certain attribute or set of attributes, and they basically project that influence at certain times when they're in a certain place upon us. And that's really, to me, something I was very comfortable with because I thought, oh, I can work with that. So it's kind of like knowing what's in the atmosphere presently and maybe a bit in front of us. So I told you I had a lead in, but let me just say this first. Uh, the objective here is, and the intention here is to create a sacred space where we can have a conversation and be transparent and just like go where we've never gone before, but not like in a real intense way, just in a very open way. So I'm really, really happy that you came on short notice right here before the equinox in the middle of this crazy eclipse corridor. I've always been very fond of you, and I really admire your work, and I just want to acknowledge, what you mean to me, and thanks for coming on today.
Oh, my pleasure, Todd. Thanks for inviting me.
Mm. Well, I
Sometimes
saw,
sometimes things work best in the last minute pop up instead of schedule.
that's how this thing has gone. That's how this thing has gone, and I think we can talk about it later, but I mean, I think that's something that's happening. Everything got deconstructed to be reconstructed with all the new earth components as opposed to carrying anything from the past, which is I think it's been true for me in my personal relationship with myself, with my partner, and with Sology. So it's all like and I see a lot of other people kind of in the same pattern. A few days ago, um and this was the lead in I had, and then I'm going to turn it over to you and see where you want to go with it. um, but a few days ago, and there are no mistakes, it may have been about 2 weeks ago, really. I started getting, Morgan's obviously galactic, I'm more organic, and I started getting this vibe of the galactics and that and I know this could be literal or metaphoric, but it's really energetic. They're here. Please understand. You know, you can reach out for us. We're always around you. Um, we want to have a closer contact, right? And I'm laying with Morgan. I'm like, I don't know if she's ready for that, yeah, because we're going through all this other stuff. But she started mentioning it a few days ago, particularly the Pleiadians. Mine were that and some others, and so anyway, it came up, and we listened to some Barbara Messiniak, Pleiadian channeling she just did, and a couple other Pleiadian things came up, and then I saw this, or she sent me a video, and somebody did, and it was, and I had just been looking into it, and then I saw this video right after. You know how that stuff happens to really accentuate things. And it was talking about how the Hopis, the Cherokee, the Hawaiians, and three or four other indigenous cultures all say they came from Pleiades. And that Alcyone, I may have mispronounced it, the big star of Pleiades, is the pineal gland. And that their teachings basically in general, and I'm not saying that's true, I'm just saying this is what I came across. And then I came across, you know, the idea of doing this with you, which I thought, oh, there's the dots. But that and then the general overview was, and again, literal and metaphorical, but always energetic, that the relationship between the cosmos and the interior of our bodies is synced in to levels that I think you might be able to expand on because of the relationship of the stars and the planets and the energies they project or that they are at certain times upon us, which I had mentioned earlier is kind of what I got from you after doing all those shows. But anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to see what was going on with you. I'd love to hear about the planetary alignments. Obviously, this is a huge, huge equinox. I don't think we've ever seen anything even close to this, not even last month. And just, yeah, what's going on collectively and whatever else you want to add. Thank you for coming in again. And I'm looking forward to this next 90 minutes.
Thanks, Todd. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be conversing with you again today. Um, so much. That's a cool. Should I talk about what your Pleiadian thing or in general? I'll just set a tone first. I feel like this moment in time we're at now is truly the merger, the oneness. So that what you talked about the one, the 37 show and the one, and the this eclipse moment perched between this equinox moment perched between the two eclipses and the sun and the moon. We really are at that, whether you call it a still point, tipping point, union point, merger point, oneness point. And just talking about the sun and the moon and their physical, orbital, celestial mechanics activities. The sun obviously is in a solar year and a lunar year are kind of two different things, right? And we know that like the moon goes through almost 13 cycles when the sun goes through one. So when the sun and the moon, so the sun and the lunar year are slightly off kilter to each other, but they connect and merge. The sun gets back to the same place in its calendar, and the moon gets back to the same place in its calendar. And that happens every 33 years. So like the sun and the moon.
Really?
That we're
Wow.
at a solar maximum where the sun is off gassing, where you see all the X flares. The sun is, we won't know if it's the maximum right now until hindsight. Like they can't tell until it's peaked and then waned. But we're here, right? We're at the solar maximum. And the moon is do you know about the lunar standstill cycle or the nodes
No,
of the
and
moon?
please explain it, but can you tell us what is the solar maximum? Is that referring to like the maximum potential or the highest ever or the
Yeah,
highest?
great question. So solar maximum and solar minimums are in several cycles, like 11-year cycles. So when the sun is at a maximum point, it like burps out a lot of plasma. It erupts, it is more active. And when it's at a solar minimum, the sun's kind of quiet. We don't get a lot of solar flares, not a lot of coronal mass ejections, not a lot of solar plasma coming to us. So when the sun is very active, it releases a lot of plasma, and then we're um, receiving a lot of codes from the sun. Does that make sense? So the solar max is like, so we're in solar cycle 25, so say the scientists. And it's said to have peak around, it's supposed to potentially peak a few years from now, but it's been more active than they predicted. So anyway, does that make sense? Is that what you're asking?
No, yeah, just looking for a clearer understanding. Don't forget about
Yeah.
the moon, but also on the sun thing. I'm just curious. I mean, I know you're not tapped into everything. You're tapped into a lot of things, but I'm just curious. The solar maximum, uh, like I wonder if you overlaid the history, like what occurred at those times. Was there major geological events and things like that? Was there some
Yes,
type of
for
yeah,
sure.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a
And
whole
then
great subject of
you mentioned 33 years, and I believe it was about the sun's cycle. Is that right?
the sun and moon calendars like
The sun and
conjunct
moon calendar, that's right. Now,
in the
are
33.
we in a 33rd year or where are
I
we at in that cycle?
It does feel that way. I have looked to try to see if anyone else is saying that, and I haven't seen that point. But yes, it does feel like we are. And the moon is at a major lunar standstill, which means it's like at its most northern and southerly. I'll explain that in a minute, but let me just give the broad picture. Like, so we're at a maximum moon cycle, a maximum sun cycle, and the reason why, so we know we're happy equinox, everybody, right? So the equinox point is at my 5 a.m. and I'm at 1 p.m. right now. So like we're here, we've arrived. It's overnight and before the sun rises again for me and for most of us. So that equinox point is, and we know we have the eclipses now that are kind of bookending or on either side of the eclipse. That only happens when we're at a lunar standstill. So like that, like we're at this major lunar standstill and the eclipses bookend the equinox at that time. So if you think back to last October, we had eclipses like October 2nd and October the teens. It was just like a little bit after equinox. In September, coming up in 2025, we'll have another lunar and solar eclipse because they always come in pairs. And that'll be like, that starts September 7th, 8th, I think, and then September 21st is the solar. That's just a little bit after equinox. Like we're here right now at this time where the eclipses cover over the equinox. It's like 1 week is lunar eclipse, then 1 week is equinox, and then the next week is the solar eclipse. That particular alignment is special and potent, and it's because of the where we're at sun in relation to moon and their cycles. So that like that to me is a big oneness point. It's like a merger of all the things. You talked about, let's go back to like, that's like big picture, but you talked about your Pleiadian and feeling like the embodiment and the Pleiades are connected. And I feel that big time too. The Pleiades sit in the Taurus constellation, and Taurus the bull is always like, to me, it like sings a song of embodiment, of like
And I'll
physicality.
just mention, if you don't remember, Aldebaran is the Eye of
Mhm.
Taurus, and that's been a big one too.
I know
Uh,
we do talk about that a
But
lot because it's one of
these
our, and the Hyades. So Aldebaran is right across the constellation. Like they sit like a gateway, the Pleiades and then the Hyades. Aldebaran is in the Hyades cluster. And yes, the Eye of the Bull. So the Taurus, we are just completing this huge cycle of Jupiter. Like a year and a half ago, Jupiter moved into Taurus. And then like slowly, Jupiter is one of those slow movers, right? So if like Mars was in Taurus, it moves through and it's done in a month. Jupiter moving through Taurus has been slow and steady. And then Jupiter got all the way up to the end of the constellation, up by the horns of the bull, up by where the Crab Nebula is. and then turned around and came all the way back, which like month after month. And Jupiter came right next to Aldebaran and then turned retrograde and went back.
When did it come? I'm just curious for a personal reason. When did it come to Aldebaran? Because Jupiter
It's come
is
three
my
times.
planet, ruling planet. Go
Oh,
ahead. Yeah.
so this one impacted my family, or the cycles of Jupiter showed itself in my biological, my family big time. And it's been very much working with the masculine mental health, physical health, um, in my family. And so when did it happen? Jupiter is with the sun back in May. You're taxing my linear brain. No, just kidding. You called me last night
Well,
to be
that's
like,
enough. That's
no.
enough right there because that's
No,
when
no.
shit.
So it
That's when
happened.
it.
I can no,
That's
my
when
brain
things
can do
started.
it. I can
Yeah.
linear. I can linear. Okay. Like May last year, the sun and Jupiter conjuncted right between Pleiades and Hyades, like right next to Aldebaran. It moved in
Well,
like
that
months
makes
before that.
sense.
And
You don't
then
have to go
so
on. Yeah, you
and
don't have to go on
then
for me. No,
right
no.
after
I was just
May, I want
okay.
to talk about it because it's been
Oh,
huge in
okay.
my
Go ahead.
I
Go ahead.
haven't really I've been full on celestial, terrestrial, planetary gatekeeping grid work. I haven't had a chance to like usually I like sharing things and like doing things. It's been like my home family and like planetary celestial do like that's like the full amount of my time. So it's a pleasure to come on here and talk to you and like get to share any of this because I've just been like at it. I don't really have
Right.
time to like reflect and speak about it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So May, that happened right before or right around when we had that big aurora borealis show that came down to southern latitudes. Because like I've always wanted to see the northern lights or the southern lights. But they came to find me in my hometown. I was like, yeah. So that happened right around the same time. And then we're talking about Jupiter moved through, but it had it moved away from Aldebaran and went to the tip of the horns of the bull and then turned around October 9th. And then it's been moving through and it just completed like February 3rd, the the Jupiter stuff. So the Monty Python, not Monty Python, Princess Bride. I was just picturing Billy Crystal as like the pits of despair. It's just been like a really deep, and it's not despair. It hasn't been a despair at all. I was just like, teasingly, but that for me personally, retrogrades aren't something like I'm not an astrologer. I do more like celestial gatekeeping, celestial grid work, which is a little bit different, which we could talk about later because like the equinox has a lot to do with how those two things are different. But Jupiter retrograding, I knew to pay attention to this Jupiter cycle and it with Aldebaran and the Pleiades, and I knew it was going to be big. And then so to wax kind of personal, I guess, my father-in-law is was 90 in his 90s with like mid-stage, end-stage dementia. And we've been caring for him for the last 3 years in his own home, but like, all that takes. My husband's his primary person. And therefore I am too. And he took a fall in his house like the day that Jupiter went retrograde. And we laid him to rest the day that Jupiter went back direct. So it's like Jovian fathers. That's been my like corridor through there. It's like Joe, like all the hospital and all the hospice and all the memory care units and all the like shopping for diapers and like all the things, right? Like it's just like all the things. But that like I'm so grateful in those human moments that we all go through as we caretake and care for our people on the planet. Like to also have the bigger picture, like the night that I went to empty his room, I came out and like was bringing stuff for the services, like back to my car. And like, there's Jupiter and Aldebaran. I'll share the picture down below in the comments, like right up and above. It was just like his, and he was living a few hours away from us, which made caring for him harder. And we moved him closer to us. And, like in my making sure we're all in the right places where we're supposed to be. We moved him to a memory care unit that was really close to one of my like hub grid spots in my local area. So it was like I felt like he was coming here to help. Um, anyway, this whole Jupiter through the Taurus thing is like, so it was impactful for me in that way that took like daily, a lot of our time. Like shopping, it felt like,
What?
we were like shopping for colleges, memory care units, and then you equip the dorm with all the stuff and like all the
So you're
things.
doing both. What day was that that you had
The
the funeral?
Jupiter. Hmm?
Yeah, what was the day that he passed, or the day that you
He
buried
passed
him?
January 19th. His funeral is on February 1st.
So it was February 1st when you walked out and saw Aldebaran and Jupiter after cleaning his,
Well, Jupiter and
or right after.
Aldebaran have been hanging out together because Jupiter's such a slow mover.
Hmm.
Jupiter and Aldebaran have been together January, February, like prominently. They were together earlier in May, but we don't see that because the sun is with them, right? So that's not like something that we're going to see in the night sky in May. Like we're in the opposite side of it. The sun has to be opposing the things we want to see so we can see them at night. So
You
like we have the
mentioned you
solar
mentioned
cycle with it. But the Jupiter,
somewhere. I'm
um,
sorry. There's
the
a lag.
moon, I know it's like, well, wax. Go ahead. What were you going to say? The moon
So,
has, so let's go back to the lunar standstill part of it. The moon is doing a lot of things because of where it's at in its cycle. So without getting too celestial mechanicsy, so we know that we have like the celestial equator is like our Earth equator projected out into the sky,
okay.
right? And then we have seasons because we have axial tilt because the Earth is tilted at 23 degrees from that. And then the moon doesn't orbit exactly the way the Earth orbits the sun. It's also tilted by 5 degrees.
All right.
So the lunar orbit and the solar orbit don't we don't have to like you don't have to know the mechanics of any of that, everybody out there. Like I could explain it a lot more. But because of how the Earth, moon, and sun are tilted, that's why we don't have an equinox every single month. I mean, not an equinox, sorry. They shouldn't be both be start with E. The equinox is obviously the point that we're at in the seasons. The eclipses, we don't have an eclipse every month
Right.
because of these like different orbital pathways, right? So the eclipses are special because the sun and the moon move together in this spot. So the moon also does something that's like occults. So the moon moves between us and the sun, and we call that an eclipse. But the moon also like sometimes covers up Venus or Mars or Spica or different other bodies, celestial bodies. And they call that, instead of an eclipse, they call that an occultation. It occults it. It moves in front of it. It blocks it. This year we had Mars and the moon crossed over each other mid-January. And that point, to me, it was like the planetary, the Ida and the Pingala, the sun and the moon. The Ida and the Pingala are the Sushumna Nadi is the central channel. This is the yoga speak now, or like Veda speak, right? And Ida and Pingala are the catechus, or the like the snakes that move around.
Like the medical symbol, the
Yes,
caduceus, or okay.
yes.
And you said the other thing was like the
The
channel.
central channel is they call the
Is that
Sushumna.
like or whatever, like in relation to uh the chakras?
Yeah,
Like is
so
okay,
yeah, I should
okay.
say. So
Okay,
this
okay.
is the central channel of the prana body, the energy body. And the chakras, they say, are like lotus flowers that are strung along the Sushumna. And the central channel and the Ida and the Pingala channel are what create um, the spin, the spiral of life. So the Kundalini. So we're in this awakening, like this, we're at the year of the snake, and then the year of the snake Lunar New Year came right at the end of January. So we had this like Mars Moon moment that to me like sung those. The Andara is actually out. That's like a whole other story. I had this like Mars Moon Andara grid set up, And the way at sunrise, the way the light came through had these long lines of red and white, or like red and white. And I was like, oh, it's Ida and Pingala. Because Pingala means like reddish, or the solar energy. And Ida is lunar. And it's like this, we're in this, like, some people would say like a masculine feminine merger. Some people might say solar lunar merger, our inner all soul aspects merger. So that was January 13th ish, something like that. And then we had Lunar New Year, which kicked off the year of the snake. So this
And that was
whole,
February
like,
1st.
the Lunar New Year was January 29th,
Okay, I got you. Okay.
something like that. Dates, someone could correct us in the comments, I'm sure, if I get it wrong. But that, like,
No,
that's
I'm following you like
the
on your
best. So,
canal.
like, that, the where the snake, like this serpent energy is prevalent, and this eclipse, um, this solar eclipse that's coming up March 29th, is a lot of ways of completion, or like working in the earth grids, where the path of like where on the earth the eclipse falls is kind of completing the eclipse we had last April. So we're very much feeling the April 8th eclipse right now, like all this. And then, I don't know, Todd, this is the planets too, like where the planets are in the sky. Saturn, Neptune, Venus, and Mercury are all right around the sun right now. And they're conjuncting each other, conjuncting the sun, conjuncting the moon. And that's
So let
all
me
like
let
this
me.
week.
Oh my God,
Like,
you're keep going, guy.
it's all
You're
the
right.
thing.
You need to share. I want to ask you. I know you've been doing this a long time because I know most of your life story, like even like from adulthood. Um, with all the time that you've spent studying this part of our reality and the code that it offers, I'm trying not to ask a leading question, but have you ever seen the
This
arrangement,
is
so to speak,
this is
like
the
this?
culmination of everything we've ever been, everything that we are, everything that we will be. This is the merger point.
And when you say that, I think I feel that you are, and I feel it myself, and I can speak for my partner, that this equinox is, I keep calling it a nexus point, like where we've gone corkscrewed into the depths and then we stop, you might say at the root, and then come back out. Like a real line of demarcation that you can put your finger on, not the solar flare, not the,
Mhm.
but something you go, you know what? This is real. Like I think a lot of us are already feeling it. I wanted to ask you too, and then I'm not going to say anything else
Ha.
because you bring so
I'll,
much.
I'll, I'll believe that when I see it. But go
You will,
ahead.
you will. No, no, seriously, because you bring so much code, and it's so refreshing to get to be in this space with you and be open. Um, you spoke about, and I think this is where I'm going with it because this is what's always appealed to me with you and others is the both parts, the code, the human part. You talked about the the masculine, the mental, the physical rehabilitation, Jupiter, Aldebaran, etc. This time period. So there was a very personal a sharing of code there. Uh, and then also the things that are happening. Um, when I was researching the equinox yesterday, I went on there and looked, what does it mean? And one of the things it said was that, and I didn't know this, but you probably did. It's a point where the light and the dark are in balance. And I took it to mean, okay, this is where we have all the code available in a given eternal moment. And now we can come out the other side having that. And I don't know from there, like, trying to live in alignment with that or merging our free will with what we know or something like that. Do you feel like, I know people have talked about solar flares and they've talked about this and that. Is this the point? Does it feel like that? You just said everything that we are has come to the same point or something like that. Do you really feel? Because I do
Well, it's
that.
one of the points. Like there's never, it's all cyclic. So these points will come around again. And that's the whole thing of the ascension and the galactic, that like the galactic year and the whole, like we are at one of those points, absolutely. Is this the only one? Maybe in our lifetimes, unless we figure out how to live to be 1,000. And but this is a crux point for our evolution. I think this is a crux point for our ascension cycle. But it's, I hesitate to answer like a yes to that because it's not a this is it, like today, because this particular, even just like we talk astronomically or celestial mechanically, the the eclipses will bookend the equinox again in 18.6 years. That like we'll have these setups again. But yes, this is one of them. And this one's huge. And it is, I didn't know I thought that way till I said it out loud to you. Thanks. So thanks for this space. But that's what I got this morning because Todd messaged me for people that they're watching. That Todd messaged me like yesterday or yesterday evening, right? Do you want to do a show? Can we do it before the equinox? I was like, sure, I'd love to chat with you, but um, let's fit it in. Why was I even telling people that? Oh, it's tuning into what we were going to talk about. It wasn't like it was just like, let's get in the moment and talk about what we're talking about. And when I sat down to tune in before we get on together today, that was like that. I was like, oh, right. Because we were all like on this, there's so much, and like what we just talked about is a lot, but it's like not even all of it. You could talk about a lot more other parts. There's a Venus thing that's happening too. I'll just pop that one in. Venus, March 22nd, the sun conjuncts Venus. So, and then Venus is normally, you can see her at night as an evening star, or you can see her in the morning as a morning star. On March 22nd and 23rd, she's both and. She's visible right at sunset and right at sunrise. And that only happens at a certain part in the Venus cycle that happens every 8 years. So we're at this like, and then we're at the eclipse cycle that happened the 2017, 2024, across the USA, North America. Sorry, not to be USA centric. North America, we're all one. Across the North America, like we're finishing up that 8 year cycle. It's just like all these, we're at a convergence point of all these various cycles. And I'm sure there's even more than those. It's just like in these moments, what we do really matters. What we choose really matters. What we say really matters. What we say to ourselves, what we think, how we spend our time, our attention, our energy. And if there's one thing like you talked about like getting to the human or the personal, and like the people in my world, part of why I've been sort of keeping to myself, like kind of quiet and removed and felt like not that the polarity of energies that we're experiencing. I don't get political, but like all that, like it's like if you're projecting hatred at another individual, no matter what their actions, that's what you're creating in the world. If that's like if I could host groups of thousands of people that I have to interact with every day because I'm going to pick my daughter up in like in half an hour, like at school, at like on the soccer field, or this, like it's people are just in general allowing the polarity to pull them apart from things, and just the message that those of us that are setting an example of light and love and oneness, I feel like it's taking everything to hold that space of neutrality, to hold that space of it's actually like okay. Like we're creating our world, and we speak it through with our every word, and we make it real in our every action and our every choice and every moment. Like that's real, and that's what's so in these points where everything is one, what you speak out into the universe is having a ripple effect through time, through space, through your own trajectories. It's just a really time to pay attention and to be clear and loving and of the light.
God, that was a lot too. that was heart expanding. Yeah, it's like a snapshot. Like I had a vision like 2 days ago, uh, in let's say my closest space, my me Morgan right now Mexico whatever, right? And it was almost like watching the last few weeks, like say from January 1st or after the solstice. All the energies moving, like that third energy moving things, like the universal energy moving things, regardless of what we're doing, how everybody's being put in a certain place. Like you were more reserved. I've been the same way. I know a bunch of people that have withdrawn, but not in the old way to avoid things, but it's been a time of isolation, solitude, and such. So I saw like a snapshot, which is what I'm picking up, like listening to you, of what it can be like. In other words, this isn't a aberration. This is a snapshot where both the dark and the light at an equinox and all these other things are coming together, where everything is kind of like goes into a pause. And you have all the information. You can now move forward in that regard. And the second thing that came to my mind, which has been really strong, but you made it bigger, was I try to simplify everything for myself to the best that I can. And it was simply, we've gotten to a point now, we're out of the no bullshit zone. We're into some other stratosphere, and it's responsibility of thoughts. Because when you talk about speaking, that includes what we think. And I think the last thing I would say too about what you're bringing up, I'd love to hear more, is the level of polarity that's meeting in the same space, whether we like it or not. Um, so even, and I know what you're saying because I just got on Facebook a while ago and I'm like, what the hell's wrong with people? Like it's just one after the other. And then I stepped back and I said, okay, well that's there and I'm over here. And and it's nice to talk to somebody who's kind of in the same space who lives a different lifestyle. I can't even imagine being a mother. Um, do you think that there is like when you talk at times, you'll say this is what's going. Well, you just did. This is what's going on. This is where the position is. This is where all the circles are meeting and the cycles are coming together. So that's kind of like a snapshot, right? But in terms of what I brought up, and I'll let it go after this, I'm just wondering why it keeps popping in my head. In a more long term level or comprehensive level or wider perspective, is there a reason that Pleiadian energy or consciousness seems to be taking hold? Because I swear for the last 10 days, the more I look around, the more I see reference to it one way or the other as the universe, speaks to us or as we speak to ourselves. Is there something going on with that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I have a lot of thoughts on that. Um, from a purely logistical galactic neighbor standpoint, the Pleiades are our next door neighbors. Like in the arm of the Milky Way that our solar system's in, one of the closest things, if we were to travel that line of stars back to the center, one of the first things we come to is the Pleiades. So I do feel like they speak loud to us because they're like we hear our neighbors. I hear my neighbor's dog every morning at 6:42 a.m. when she lets him out, barking in the backyard. We hear the Pleiades because they're next door to us. And um, the Pleiades have a very the tales you talked about. Let's go back to the very first thing that you talked about, please. The talk about the Native Americans and like their kinship with the Pleiades. And in all the tales, most of the indigenous culture tales, the Pleiadians were once humans, often girls, that were turned into stars. So there's something about that feeling. But back to like the thing you talked about the inner space and outer space, right? Well, it's like all this stuff. We could talk about what's happening up up in the night sky or out and around. And that does, just like the moon pulls on the water and makes the tides, all those forces, just like they pull on our bodies, but they also are like from the surface of the skin, as within, without. It's like the skin being your interface to the outer world. Vibrationally, energetically, the whole cosmos is like layered within your inner space, just as it from the surface of your skin is out in the outer space. So when you talked about the Pleiades and the embodiment, the seven Pleiades are often associated with the seven chakras and the seven rays of the rainbow and the seven colors of the rainbow. And then the chakras are depicted as that's a human thing, like that each chakra is like how sunlight comes through a prism and it's diffracted into the seven colors, like our energy body. We are the prism, we are the crystal, and the sun comes in and it's rainbowized. And there are systems that associate the Pleiades with different chakras of different colors. There is a whole rainbowy quality to them. And that like rainbowness, like what the chakras are how does like universal prana, universal creator force, life force, how does it become Julie Roberts, Todd Medina? Like how does the divine, this is the whole philosophy and like practice of a lot of the martial arts in India and yoga, of course. It's like, how does the divine become manifest form? And the ancient yogis, that a lot of what they were contemplating in the caves, was just that, like, how does divine step down to human? And there are a lot of philosophical ways, but the golden mean and that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, like stepping down through into form, sunlight like coming, the sun is really like our fuel, our life force. Like that's how we get our food, that's how we get our nourishment, that's what like keeps life on our planet going. And the Pleiades, like rainbow eyes, they like speak that code. So it's like a familiar language too. Where some of the other stars, like the Arcturian star codes, the star codes that aren't quite, that's like the Arcturus star is like in a from a whole different, it's not like within our galaxy. Like this, the stars that are in our galaxy, they speak a more familiar language. You know how like people in neighboring, you're in the border there. You live in
Yeah,
Texas a long time. Like
there are,
people on the
well, I mean,
border can sort of
yeah,
speak both languages. So like
yeah,
the Pleiades
they're
being
our
our
closest
neighbor.
ancestors, right? They're our closest aspects, our closest ancestors. So that makes a lot of sense. And what really made me see what you're talking about was the Seven Sisters. So I saw it as like you were talking about refraction or reflection, right? The light, the prism, and the light going into that. Okay. So you got the Seven Sisters, and then I could see like the rays, the harmonics. I could see. Oh wow, that's how it happened. It wasn't so much the literal human evolvement thing. The thing that I am intrigued about is, and because it resonates, but I don't understand it, and I think that's the big thing. Like the yogis in the cave going, how did that create this? And I think that that's where the big trick is for me. Is like, okay, well, stop worrying about it and just be it. You know what I mean? But the way that you described that, I could see where those seven came into the earth as creative elements, as sound, as rays, as color. Uh, but the thing about them having been human both makes sense to me and it doesn't make sense to me. But for some reason it resonates. So
Well,
it must have happened.
it's our culture doesn't put a lot of importance on this, so we're not really writing. Well, you and I are right now. This conversation is writing those tales, modern tales, but like the tales that we're talking about, the myths of how were stars created, like the cultures before there was unnatural light, like the stars were like TV, like the star of the night sky was much more prevalent. and telling tales of that. But they also, there's tons of tales of star beings coming to Earth and speaking to the people, right? In all the different cultures. Like, but it's that merger. It's like I we talk to stars every day, all the time. It's like where you put your attention in your own field, like you can listen to it all the time. They're always like speaking their star code language. But I wanted to switch. So we have the Pleiades as the seven sisters. Now let's go over to the Hyades. They're a V-shaped constellation. Aldebaran is at the tip of one of the Bs. And so the Pleiades to me are that's the embodiment of almost the like the sensual or like the emotional, the the rainbow qualities of coming
Feminine?
human.
Would you say the feminine?
Um, Maybe, but where I was going more like between the physical body and then the mental body. So since May and all this Jupiter with what's come through for me, and we talked about this a lot too, like how does gatekeeping differentiate from astrology? Astrology is an awesome science. A lot of people are really good at it. I love their wisdom, but that's more of like this planet does this. It's very like fixed and linear and date oriented. Like gatekeeping to me is more like you notice what the aperture is, where the opening is going to be, and then you let flow in what flows in. So for me, this huge, like I was talking about this whole Taurus Jupiter gate that has taken my full attention for the last year and a half. In May, when Jupiter got to a certain spot, I think it was right next to Aldebaran. At some point there, the Hyades, I was looking up information about the Hyades. So the Hyades are said to be like the brothers or the cousins of the Pleiades, even in the ancient, like the Grecian tales of them. There, there's five of them. And then when I was reading about them, they had the like Delta Theta, the Greek, they were named after the Greek alphabet. And I was like, oh, the Hyades rule over our mental body. They rule over like brainwave states. So I do sound healing, energy, or I don't call it healing, but like sound codes. And in the last many years, have introduced a whole bunch of crystal bowls into my team here at Innerspace. So I've been very much working with the binaural, the beats, that's the mental body, working with sound codes to affect and transform the mental body. Because the mental health, mental body has been getting highlighted for a lot of people, like most of the people in my reality, in one way or another since that time. So I've developed this like sound tools that work with the Hyades cluster, but they work on the human mental body by going through, that. Oh, wait, I happen to have the chart right over here.
Cool.
But the
That's
theta,
it. But
this one
see,
got like,
I
but the
said that
gamma, like
about,
there's different hertz, like you use two different crystal bowls at a different a hertz interval, and they create this like, like a wah wah pedal, like a wah wah sound, and that it has effect on the
can
physical
you
form.
show us this before you leave?
Sure, I do
Let
have
me
a,
let me let me just
yeah,
throw this in. As you're describing, I'm going back, to the things you said before, particularly about what you said and I don't know the specifics, but in regard to you mentioned the masculine as you were talking about the things that you'd observed and experienced in your own family that was tied to Jupiter, Aldebaran, etc., and the mental, right? The mental of the masculine. And then I said to you, oh, is the Pleiadian like feminine
yes,
attributes? Because I didn't know about the other one. And then as you're describing it, I'm going, well, shit, I mean, I know labels are labels, but I was like,
yeah, yeah.
well, that's like where I've been. Like
Hmm.
that's where it's been like this mental drill down to the logic is no longer logical. It's I don't know. I would say it like for me anyway, like moving from that type of framework and not necessarily letting it go, but stepping into that other side, that Pleiades side, that feminine side of, of what, you know, anything's possible, unknown, magic, or whatever the case is. But it really spoke to me. Thank you.
Yeah, and I see what you mean about the masculine and feminine. I hadn't thought of it like that. But that like they are depict that, but they're like different. It's like emotional body or like physical body, emotional body or mental body. But that part of the squeeze, because nobody, there's been a squeeze going on too with this like this corridor. We're talking about this oneness point. Like, how does one get to, everyone's so fond of saying they want to get to 0 point or they want to get to like neutral, or how does one do that? It's like it's a singularity is what the scientists call it. Like everything has to come together as one. And when we're on that path to wellness, that I mean oneness, it's wellness too. Path to oneness, it does feel convergy, and that feels
Yeah.
squeezy because you have like the dream state. Like today, I told you a lot of other planets are aligned. Today is Neptune in Sun conjunct today. So I've had a lot of friends and a lot of people contact like the dream state. Not that that has to be, but we have like, there's the dream state's been active, but the mental, let's going back to the mental body. I do feel like people were pushed to realize how they talk to themselves in their quiet time, or what like anxiety, like what's the tape that's playing. And tapes got a lot louder so that they could be addressed and shifted if you're, fortunate enough to put yourself in a position where you're going to empower yourself to do that. But everybody needs assistance and help with that too. So I've been, yeah, the methodology, I don't know what to call it. Like I'm not like a system, but so I've gathered a whole bunch of bowls. I don't have them there at my home. I have like three different like setups for stuff, but they're at my home field, but I could put a picture of them up. But anyway, they're like they work together, and I have a bunch of stuff on my YouTube page, and I'll be doing more stuff with it too. So it's not like
Mm,
people
cool.
can't see it here, but that those five, I have five bowls, and they happen to be just because I wanted to round up my collection too, and they work together. Because you're a musician guy, right? They happen to be the sharps. So I have a low C sharp, a D sharp, but they've collected. And for me, the way that the teams have formed here, these sound there's andaras, there's crystal bowls, tuning forks. I have a whole bunch of things, but they like come together. So it's like the Andara almost kind of leads the way and then wants to assemble a bowl of crystal bowls to go with it. And so it's a whole vibrational tool set that I've been busy working on. But I
It
have a,
sounds like a microcosm of what you're talking about with the energy right now, which is where every part of you comes in, right? Like everything you know, every code, every
yes,
life, or however you want to put it, and then yes, okay, thank you. And now we're entering or in this space because I can't do linear either, but where everything's different. Like everything is different. Like you can't argue with it. There's something so real that it won't let you bullshit. Like you know what I mean? It's too uncomfortable. And if like say a strong minority's feeling it, particularly the women, like that, I'm seeing that like this mass of foundation that kind of came out first, 2012, and so many, and this, so many feminine practitioners, and kind of in the background, that energy coming out to me is been very obvious. But now that you're talking about, I think you mentioned earlier, some people might call it, you were talking about the whole arrangement, some people might call it masculine, feminine. I can see where it could be called dark and light, positive, negative, masculine. There's so many, but
the
in the
yin yang.
human condition, I think for me anyway, that strikes home. That's what it feels like to me. I can't explain it. I don't know how it works, but it feels like there's two sides. Like you said, the convergence. I told Morgan this, we were talking yesterday, and I was like, it's been like for me the last few weeks. there was like 10,000 streams, and they were all coming in, and I was becoming aware of them. And then as we start to converge, like into a vortex, there became like 1,000, and then 500, and then 300. And it's not that any of them are lost, they're combining.
Mhm.
And it's because, because I was telling her, I don't know these things until we have a conversation, or until I'm talking to Julie on, I think that's how it happens when we start to share.
Mhm.
Because I've had a lot of people tell me in 36 shows this year that, hey, I guess in their own way, they were saying, hey, I know what's going on, but I can't explain it. So, so these conversations have been like little flashes of this and that. Um, but to listen to, or to listen now after all these years and all these shows we've done together, and really take in what you bring in, and it's another way. So I look at what you're talking about with the Andaras and the tuning forks and the crystal bowls, etc. And you're actually, to me, which is a reflection of what we're all moving into, I think, new creation. But that snapshot, like you were describing the atmosphere now, with all the positioning as it is and all the cycles coming together at the same time, and so on, a snapshot of everything's available to us, and we have this chance to now combine it with our human and express it, to the best of our ability. And I feel like there's a really, really powerful code in that, even though it may seem small by the old systems of appraisal and public opinion.
I'm laughing because like I was just trying to like put it on a flyer to hang up at the coffee shop next door. People are always like dropping in like, what do you do here anyway? But yeah, that's my job to bring it to like the people. But I want to say one other, can I say about the eclipse? That's beautiful. I love what you just said. I love having these conversations with you. Thanks for having me on today. So we're at Equinox point as we speak tonight, tomorrow morning, depending where you are, tomorrow afternoon. And then next Saturday, March 29th, is a solar eclipse. So I looked at where, there's only a small part of the Earth where solar eclipses are visible from. This one is visible from like the westernmost coast of Greenland and the easternmost coast of Labrador, Newfoundland, like Atlantic Canada, like up in the
They're really
north.
small.
Is what? Yeah.
Like really
And
small.
the so we have four eclipses in 2025. Two of them are now in March, two of them in September. As we talked about before, they're at the equinox now because of the where we are in the lunar cycle. And if you look at those four on the map, I have a picture and I'll put it at least on Facebook. I don't know how to do that, but underneath, and I'll put it on I'm going to share about it in the next few days too. But if you look at the map of where those four eclipses happen, two of them are lunar, two of them are solar. We always get a lunar solar because of the alignments. They come together in pairs, right? So the March ones, the lunar eclipse was visible on the swath of North America, South America, that hemisphere. The next lunar eclipse that's happening in September 7th and 8th, is visible on the opposite side of the world. So Asia and Europe zone. The solar eclipse that's happening March 29th is that like close to the North Pole visible. And the September 21st solar eclipse that's happening is on the South Pole, is visible around Antarctica, South Pole. So the way that they're clicking in goes with this whole, and then the year of the snake thing, like we're activating, some people are calling it the planetary kundalini, right? Have you heard people talking about that? Like our personal, of course, kundalini is awakening, and that's like an ascension or an activation in itself. as each individual human, but the planet has its own central channel. It has its own axis mundi and has its own solar and lunar cycles, Ida and Pingala. And where the eclipse, when the moon blocks the sun and that part of the earth isn't getting the sun, like we know the temperature drops. Did you get a chance to be, were you under the one in April? It went through Texas, right? Like
Mhm.
I've had the privilege
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the last year and a half also to be under that eclipse that happened in Texas, or I went to Texas for
I
the one that
remember that.
happened in
I remember
October.
that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I went up to Vermont for the April 8th one, the total eclipse. And I'm planning next week to go as far north as my car will take me in the time allotted by my family to go see the, because
Yes.
like I can see the from here in northern New England, we get it's only it's a partial eclipse next week. The further north I go into Maine, I'll get more of a view. But the crystal beds. So anyway, that what's the way that when the place on the earth that the eclipse is seen from or is felt changes the background vibration and has an effect on the grids in that place. Like it's like a reboot or reset. So this North Pole, South Pole, Eastern Hemisphere, Western Hemisphere is like it's creating quite a calibration this year, is what I'm seeing.
Well, and you're
And
saying that on top of, because it's both what I was saying, what I researched with the equinox, like a given week equinox is when, so to speak, the dark and the light as illumination or not is equal. The days are equal. The day and
yeah,
night are equal. So then
yeah.
you have this situation you're talking about where all these things are coming together at the same time, basically.
Mhm.
Um,
And then how the eclipses happen to be falling this year are kind of doing it planetarily too. Like you can almost see the yin yang symbol in the eclipse maps.
mm,
Like, oh, that's happening too. So like that activation of the grids activates the planetary kundalini and increases our spin and like that whole it's because how do you get when you see something like spinning really, really fast, it almost looks like it's standing still.
yeah.
Like
Yes.
that's another way that we get
Yeah.
to oneness
Yeah.
point or 0 point
Yeah.
is
It's
we like
almost like
spin
we
as
don't have a
fast as we
choice. You know what I mean? It's like I used to say, "Let go or be dragged." That I was in proverb, but it's more like get what you can get from it, and all this information, all these cookie crumbs, what you bring in, what others bring in, we kind of put it together. Um, because for me, there's been a more and more emphasis on being present, and like you were talking about earlier, being present with yourself, or starting with yourself. But going back to what you were saying, and I was kind of going the same direction with what you were talking about, is now that, so I think what you're saying
yeah,
is for the layman,
okay.
we're at a point where all these things are in a certain position, cycles are coming together at the same time, and so on. And in a larger way, it is a snapshot. The dark and the light are equal per se. We can see more clearly, however you want to put it. Um, and I think where there's been a lot of people having mental, physical, emotional, and so on. This has not been talked about enough, but it's all the same thing. Everyone's going through it kind of differently. But regardless of that, the reading, so to speak, that you give us, the take on everything and other things I'm feeling. I don't know about you, but even with the contrast of like what you have to do as a mother and the things that you talked about in terms of taking care of a loved one, and then also popping over here and being Julie, multidimensional. Um, with all of that, does it feel to you like irrefutably that the potential, the promise, the possibility is ultra extraordinary? Like there are no limits, kind of thing.
That's always true, isn't it? Um, yeah, I feel like so the solar eclipse that's happening on Sunday, March 29th, feels to me like we're, and maybe, I'm right here by Boston, so St. Patrick's Day is a big deal, and that's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I feel like this next eclipse, March 29th, is because it's close to St. Patty's Day, is like our chance to collect it all. So I wanted to like draw it to people's attention. And I was talking about how it's up in Labrador, the the crystal beds of the labradorite that's up there. I'm trying to show it, but I have a background screen. Oh, there we go.
Oh, I can see it.
I've been like, I have a whole bunch of, so the crystal beds that are in the earth in Labrador, Newfoundland, northern, eastern Canada are going to get um, directly under this partial solar eclipse. But there's a way that we talk about natives, this labradorite, they talk about it as back here is the stone of the aurora borealis. Like there's a way that, so this labradorite, have you ever played with it? It has that like sheen, almost like opal, or it has, so
Yeah.
it's called labradorescence. So labradorescence is like, it's about the cuttings in within the crystal, how the crystal's formed, and how it like creates that sheen, that rainbowy sheen. And it looks like what the aurora borealis looks like at the sky. They talk the Inuit tales from up north. We're talking about how like when they first encountered that on the land, the myths are it's like, oh, they took a piece of the lights and brought it down to stone. So it's they've the labradorite is helpful if anyone has any or wants to get some. I have some available that people can buy on my shop, or I can gift you some if you have limited funds. I'm glad to send you some. But labradorite has been calling forth really strong to help all of us. It's like for me, it's grounding for sure, but we don't want to be grounded. It's stabilizing. We're talking about having that like thin place of like where you find your ability to hold neutral. It's been helping me with that for sure. But the labradorescence is a, gemologist or mineralogist term of like having that inner shine. It's like you have shine even when you don't have shine. It's like having that glow come from within. And that's like that self-sustaining kind of glow, like that keeps your soul fed, that nourishment or that like that nectar. So that's available. You talked about all the things coming in to the now, to the one that here we are in that moment, and if we turn our attention to it, we can like collect the fruits or harvest the ripe mango or like pot of gold, whatever you want to bring to it. It's like it's your time to really connect with your soul's deepest calling, your highest role you can play, for your family and for light on this planet. It's like it's really our time to shine.
Right.
And um doing that like in the face of all the opposition and polarity feels like the most appropriate reaction to, but it's like it's asking our everything. I guess that's what I want to
Right.
say. Like to show
Right.
up anyway in that place of elation and light and effervescence, like inner illumination. That's what it feels like that this quarter is really asking of each one of us. Like, how do we get to that place of shining from within, being a star?
Wow. Let your energy speak for itself, you know. Um, Comfortable in your own skin. I've always admired people like that. Um, what you said too, there was a couple things you said too, and I know it's my curious mind, but one of them was obviously that we, the Hopi, whoever came from the stars, came from Pleiades, but yet there was a because I said to you, I don't get the part it resonates about the Pleiadians were humans, but it makes total sense, right? That they were like these sisters, for instance, were humans and became stars. It works both ways, right? I mean, it's a continuous paradox, but I don't know. I to me, this really feels different. I mean, it really does. I never thought, for instance, that let's say in the last 3 months, of this year, that at this point in the game, me on a personal level, I would have said, "Get me the fuck out of here." You know what I mean? Like moments like that. It hasn't been a lot. It hasn't been, but there's always seemed to have been this carrot on the stick. But as they say, it feels like the planets are aligning. And when listening to you about the 33 years and the 11 years and this and that, it really sounds to me like both on the equinox as a microcosm and the general that it's produced is in the same spot. So if I understand it correctly, it's not commonplace to have four eclipses in a year where each one of them has bookends basically of an equinox. Like that in itself says something to me. Like I'm sitting here going, what the hell are we getting into in March? And now I realize there's a bookend in September in the equinox, right? Like that's a powerful symbology to
The
me.
the bookend is, well, we're, yeah, it is a powerful moment. We're here where the eclipses span the equinox. That's a now thing. That's a March 2025 thing. And whatever 18.6 plus 2025 is like when that would happen again. It's cool because it works through, the moon is at half illumination too, like a half moon now. Is so what the lunar standstill cycle, can I explain that a tiny bit? Because the people, I just sort of referred to it, I said I'd explain it. So you know how we have seasons, obviously. And if you lived on the equator, well, you kind of do, don't you? It's like 12 of 12. You're at that, there aren't seasons on the equator. Seasons come because the Earth is tipped, right? And then in the northern hemisphere, we get more light during the June time. Southern hemisphere is in winter, all that. Um, so what the sun, when it's say I live like at 42 parallel, right? And so at 45 parallel-ish. During my winter solstice, the sun sets obviously earlier and late, rises later, but it also is, if you're standing on a beach and all you can see is ocean and you're standing due east, the sun will rise on that due east point on the equinoxes.
Okay.
On the summer solstice, it rises more northernly, right? And at the summer, it rises, summer solstice, it goes more southerly. That cycle happens for a whole year for the sun. The moon goes through that same cycle every month. So the moon rises, like where moonrise is on the horizon changes more rapidly. The moon, so the horizon, like north south positions for the solstices, the moon can go out of bounds of those or can go further than the sun can on the horizon lines. So we're at that time where right now, it was March 7th, I think. I went out and took some pictures. I shared them on Facebook. The northernmost moonrise happened in March, and the southernmost moonrise is going to happen again at the end of March. Like, so we're at that point where the moon is like as wide north and south as possible.
Mm.
Because of that, the eclipses happen, and how that works with the angles and activities. That's part of that cycle is when the eclipses bookend the equinox. Does that make sense? So like it's
Mhm.
not bookended by September, like you said. Book like for 2025 it is, but last October, that last
Yeah.
fall, and next fall are slightly less aligned to the equinoxes, and it's going
Yeah.
to trail off until like 9 years from now, and then it'll build back up.
Yeah,
But we
that's
are
what I
at
was
a special
talking
point.
about. So we're in a year where it's in
Yes,
that confine. And so you have this corridor in March. It's like the what you were talking about, the sun and the moon. So the sun does this one time, and in that period, the moon does it 12, 13 times, right?
Yeah, right.
It's the same. I see the same pattern. So you have this corridor in March, and we've had them before in these last few years. I can remember going back to like 2017, we had that huge eclipse. I was
Hmm.
on a mountain in Utah. And so that's when I first started to become aware of the number of eclipses, how they were placed, et cetera. We witnessed a few of them. But so you have this corridor in the spring equinox, and then you have, and it has bookends, eclipse bookends. And then you have this one in September. And and so to me, like that's another, hey, the cycles are all coming to the same point at the same time kind of thing. Like they're aligning. They're things are aligning. You can't deny it. So what does that mean? And what I've learned from you over the years, like what you bring in, how does it work, is to be aware, which you've explained so well, where we're at. And so from there, like you said earlier, isn't that what we always do? Well, yeah, I guess you're right. But like it seems like we're in a space where there's the utmost code available. And there seems to be a direct correlation between the openness of our heart, you know what I mean? And and then that, which I think you're a good example of, that coming out in a way that we never had before. So you, like in your situation, you have organically, in communion, in deliberation, created this new expression of your soul, basically, which is the singing bowls with the end. You know what I mean? Like it's that's remix. That's what Kuan Yin remix, or you know what I mean? It's like that's the part that I'm talking about where I'm like, okay, wow, we've got all this information. What do we do? Is there going to be two Earths? Is there going to be four Earths? Is this going to have no, it's right here,
Yeah,
which really came through to me, really came through with what you said in the beginning in general about the things that you went through on a personal level with your family in tandem with everything that you're seeing. And then to make the comment like, wow, I've been so deep in both of these streams that I haven't had the chance to express it and share it. Yeah. That kind of energy to me is like, wow, that's it right there. I don't know the words. It's just the frequency, the resonance, the newness. It's something that we didn't come in with. For everything that we did come in with, it's like what we came in with combined with our experience at this snapshot place where everything has come to the table, and now we get to come out the other side of the vortex to the best of our ability. We
like
could all
we're
be in. Yeah.
yeah, like we're reclaiming, like, well, you say we didn't come in with, but like on a like galactic DNA level, we did. That's I was talking, like when I was talking about the catechus or the either the pingala, that it also mirrors like our DNA. So you could say that like that we're like each DNA spiral, if we go with like a 12 strand DNA, each DNA spiral is like a holographic projector that like projects out one of your soul aspects or one of your ancient skill sets. It's like there's a deep sense of like, it's like, yes, we're forging, I are forging new things, but aren't these like the culmination of skill sets from, some might say like my Atlantean skill sets or my Lemurian skill sets, my Arcturian skill sets, my Pleiadian. People like to label them as things, but that too, it's like you and I, like eons and eons ago, were having the same conversation, and I was like playing my whatever crystal bowls and like the cave, and you were, it's like, are these new skill sets, or are like really uncovering our inner knowing that's encoded in us all along? And allowing it to come forth and shine, like that inner, like I was talking about the labradorite, like that inner essence. Like, can you allow your inner essence to like come through and shine, and all these things merge?
Mm.
So the lab are going to go like They want me to talk about the glacier. So I've been, if you want to know what, like if you looked at my YouTube memory history, whatever, I've been watching glaciers calve, glaciers and icebergs, because there's like, and I'm blessed to, I live with a 10-year-old girl, my like tiny baby. She's 10 now. Can you believe it? But we went for her 10th birthday is on the right close to the December solstice. We went to see Moana 2. You know, you talk about like you were talking about the indigenous people and studying their, you're like, why are the stars important? As you were talking way back at the beginning of our conversation, I was like in the Moana space of like her, reclaiming her, you could say cultural heritage, or like she's a voyager, like her people. And what she would do is get in a boat and like guide herself through by the stars. Like the stars were for our ancestors, the stars were guiding posts in so many ways. It's just like celestial navigation. But that part of the ascension cycle, we talk about all these like 12,000 year cycles. And here where I live, because I'm in New England on the north coast of USA, people that don't know, a lot of the land that we live on here is like is glacial till from the last ice age. Like the glaciers were down like right to Cape Cod, right to Long Island Sound, like Montauk and all that, Cape Cod and the islands. It's all glacial sand. And then, so it's like here in the fabric, like grid workers that work with the land or earth keepers, like encoded in the land here are the glaciers. But like what's happening now with a lot of the glaciers, just even this eclipse going into the glaciers, like when it goes north and south pole, that's just been something that's it's like if I had unlimited money and unlimited time, I would be up there. Maybe some year I'll get up there, but like on the coast of Labradorite and my like it's still winter up here, Todd. I know you're in like basking on a beach, but we're like it's like 32 degrees out today. We'll be like watching the glaciers, but this time of year, right when the eclipse is going to be hitting, I could just picture the eclipse. I feel like there might be like a nice display of northern lights, maybe some solar flares coming in the next few weeks, and that like I kept seeing this eclipse as like the northern lights during the daytime over the glaciers. That's like the quality it's giving me.
Awesome. Loving this. Um, I've known you quite a while. Um, One thing I find really interesting is the way, when I'm sure people see it in me, like, we did something a few years ago and blah, 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 and things changed and we all have expanded and grown, and maybe we don't talk about that enough in the proper way. Um, but I'm just curious, like, I mean, you said your youngest is 10. I know you have another that's a little bit older. Um, I
15
know,
going on 16.
yeah, yeah.
My
Hey,
next
don't
parenting
feel
achievement
bad.
is
Don't
driving.
feel bad. I don't want to say anything beyond that. I don't want to piss any
Good.
of my kids off. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, like has I just have to ask you this. To my comment where I was like, "Get me the fuck out of here" a couple of times this year. Do you have those moments anymore? I mean, are you pretty comfortable in your space, in your presence, in the presence of your family, and the work you're doing, even if you have to go and drop into 3D with the soccer moms and hear all the polarity? Uh, how's home base? How are you feeling? I mean, is it, what's it been like? Can you describe it? You seem pretty balanced and steady, very steady.
My immediate home base is that right now we're at well, say balanced and steady, but we just went through a kind of a big upheaval too. Um, upstairs, like we were talking about DNA and lineage, I kind of watched my kids. It's interesting, when a parent dies, obviously that's a huge thing. When you're in-law, like I got to be there as if it was my parent, like caretaking for them like they're my parent, but like removed from it in a way too, because it's actually not my dad, it's my husband's dad, right? But then it's my kid's grandfather, and that like the like watching the like how the DNA unravels really when the like elder passes, or that's not what you're asking me about. Just in general, there's a way that like us like householder folks, it's like we learn to be like shapeshifters all the more. It's like you're doing it all the time, but it just had like it has to be seamless. Is that what you're? But like,
Hmm.
what do you mean about at home? Like my people are okay at
No,
my house.
that's a no. I meant home like here, but I mean, no,
Oh,
I
oh,
get
like
that.
for
No,
me,
I thought your explanation
well,
was great.
it's
Yeah.
interesting. Yes. I want to talk to you about the body mint thing though. When you talked about if you ever want to like check out, there's part of this whole cycle that we're talking about that's been the choice point has been coming to more and more people. The choice point between death and life feels like, or that echo of like, there might be something wrong with my human body that might end my human body and my time on this earth. You know, and that has been like when I talk about the mental thing, that has been talking louder. Like it could be just like, oh, I slept weird on my shoulder, but then like, you wake up like what people are mentally projecting about what's going on in their body and how it's going to play out is one aspect of it. Old injuries. So like eclipse things, like we talk about all this convergence, and yes, it's a fantastic choice point to choose light. It is also a major squeegee point for all the stuff, like the dreams of the ex-boyfriend that jilted you in college, the whatever, the business deal that went wrong, the like things like that is ever present, and like all the timelines are like playing like all the radio stations at once. And um that squeeze of like the embodiment piece and like working through like people, I have clients that have like these old injuries that like, that's like, oh, whatever. I twisted my ankle, but it was like when I played basketball when I was in college, but it was like, why am I limping now? I'm 60, like that kind of like that old body stuff is coming to the forefront. And sometimes the echoes of the floods or the cataclysms or the like other things are like there in the field, and we hear them kind of like echo and reverberate, and it's like another choice point of whether you choose to like relive or reactivate that timeline or allow it to like ripple away, and reset your course.
That was a good description, both ways, in both regards, because it's both part of it. There's this collective hum. That's part of the reason I had reached out to our friend Maureen Moss because I saw a post she did. I told you a couple days ago, and I don't even remember the particulars of it. I just remember that it speaks to what you're talking about right now. It speaks to the reality of the coding and also the choice we want to make in regard to how we hold that, the context of it in our heads, the trauma, the story, the so on, the over identification. But she was talking about how some people had been, I think, approaching her recently about, I don't know, something to the effect of like, are the Lemuria codes coming online, or are you getting Lemuria? And then the way she answered, and I don't remember the particulars, but it was basically a summation, and then she had a longer part. But the summation, it was like, yes, this is where we were. This is what happened. This is the point we got to. And in at least the way I took it in was, and this is where we are again. So it was like, let that shit go, homie. You know what I mean? Like even right up to yesterday, appreciate what the composite of what, not just me and you and but the whole thing, appreciate it, and then um, take that contemplative, deliberate, steady baby step actions forward. um, that's where I feel like we're at, and it's a weird spot. So talking to a few people this year, 36 shows, there is something that there's a common thread, and everyone's saying it differently, but they're all exemplifying it. And that is, um, yeah, I'm in. The show's going on, and all that stuff out there is getting so loud that I'm just going to turn it off. and the definition of what's out there has uh, become everything from the global stage to the person right in front of us, or the situation right in front of us. And the last thing I wanted to add too, because I think it's important, a lot of people, we talked about on the old show, especially in like 23 and then in 24 before I petered out and took a break, um, about the body's consciousness and the body's voice. And it's so funny how, for myself and even watching other people over the years, how they'll bring something to the table, and it's just like our process. It doesn't actually embody till later. So it has a greater meaning later, but the body's consciousness really seems to be speaking and showing up and letting us know, you know, one way or the other. Can you hear me? Did I fade
Yeah,
out?
no, I can hear.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so yeah, that was kind of my like I can't explain it, but like what I had said at the very beginning, I know there's a correlation. Even when you talk about the Pleiadians and the rays, and like you can see even like the equinoxes and the geometrical arrangement, you can see the formation, you can see the geometry, but yet there's something, I don't know, being offered, I don't know, where we can create a new expression of the old, or something like what I was saying with the example of your andaras and your tuning forks and your singing bowls, but something where it is literally a creative expression of inspiration and experience and living in every moment, and it's so far away from for what we came from, but it's always been in the message that we always received. All of us, it brought us to the same crazy place. And it's very fresh to me. Every day is like, oh, it's a whole new world.
as you say that, it's like it makes me think of in the chakra yoga texts, they talk about the involution current and the evolution current. And those are the same thing as saying like ascension and descension. And that's the same thing as like, are we the stars or the stars us? It's like our terrestrial beings, our human form beings, are ascending our consciousness, our awareness, our attention to like, higher up the column or up to receive that source light, that divine guidance. At the same time, the divine, the source light is descending to make its way to us. And like that merge point is like where we meet in the middle. Is that similar to what you're saying? Is like that union place?
Yeah, I
And
think,
it's
yeah,
like,
but yes. I don't know. For me, it feels like okay, so like you have this high level of awareness and relationship with responsibility that you can start with, you can found it on your own, being responsible for your own thoughts, because that's going to parlay into words and actions and so on. And that, so if I look at what inspires me, what drives me, what was always there, same thing I share with you and everyone that's ever come on this show. And I mean, seriously, uh, the difference is a new, I don't know what you would say, a new level of creativity or creation, where I know it sounds cliche, but like where we're literally walking the talk. But the reciprocation is more and more immediate. But it makes no fucking sense out here. I mean, I'm 63 years old, living in, if you look by human terms, like, oh, this is going on, that's going on, it doesn't make any sense. But I can point to thousands of people like me, including you. I mean, how many New England mothers of two, uh, you know, in the strong foundational marriage you have, where you've got all the contrast. You find a woman, a mother, a professional, practitioner that jumps in the car and drives into the northernmost part of Canada in the middle of an eclipse in 20-degree, 10-degree weather. You know what I mean? Like these are the things that are I think we've overlooked. I think the numbers are a lot bigger, and it's created a space
Yeah, I was gonna say,
like
hopefully there's hundreds of us.
yeah, it's like
And
I
we're
was telling
finding each
Morgan.
other too. That's the
Yes, of
fun part.
course. I was telling Morgan the other day. It's like everything that all the effort we put in from 2012 to 2024. That's kind of how I see that block. That 12 years. It was in a space where there was a lot of resistance. There was a lot of alternate force coming. Almost like the math was wrong, or the magnetism was wrong. You know what I mean? Almost like the negative. Let's say that was the negative, not in the evil way, but and we were the positive. Like you take magnets and they go boom, and they're together. So it was almost like one was attracting and the other one was repelling. But I think we something's happened. I think there is probably some relevance to the 2017 eclipse and that whole thing that started from there. I don't remember all the particulars, but four blood moons in a year and this and that. But something is going on. Like it's shifted. And I'm not talking about Trump or politics or this or that or, narratives or that's the whole point. that's not even, that's like the farthest reaching ripples that we've had that have been left, untamed and allowed you could say run and manage us. But now it's changing. And I think it's for these personal stories and personal creations and I think there's a lot to be said too for family units coming back online.
Well, I'm
Like,
going back to you had asked me about like I don't think I knew what you were asking me before, and I kind of waxed like more personal, but like the stabilizer role of like keeping things like stabilizing fluctuations in the field and stuff in the grid is like as has been full on for all of us that do that work, that work on that being in the middle. But you talked about, you didn't say the word isolating yourself, but like keeping, but I think what these times are asking us, is to be that neutral place, that stable place, that see the alarm that it agreed. She jumped off the shelf. That to be that neutral place, that stable place, that balance point place in the face of all of it, like even in the moments, like in the family unit, in the greater family, in the like lineages, in the line at the grocery store, like listening to people have you know, their spin-off. Like it's it's everywhere, it's in our face, and it's asking us louder to be that in all sorts of circumstances. You know, one of my healing teachers back in the day would say like, it's fine. We can do it in this room. Like we can hold this neutral place. We're meditating. We're in this healing training. We're in this room. It's like you could walk down any city street in any place and you're okay. Like you're still okay in your field. You're like out there in any circumstance and you can still hold this in your field. Like that's the thing. So that's what these times are at.
yeah, I think that's a really good point. We have a saying over here which has been around for a couple of years, and it was if you don't know what to do, like a situation unfolds or whatever the case is, and you're in flow or not in flow, whatever, and you just don't know what to do, don't do anything. But and then for me, it was like this has been November, December, January, February into March, where we've had this period where a lot of us, I think a lot of people can identify with it, which was with the body and with reset and with rehabbing and scraping the bottom of the barrel out. It became, and I did use the word isolation, solitude,
Mhm.
silence, peace. Um, you mentioned singularity. There's another paradox, like my own singularity. You know what I mean? And so it was like, I don't know, like part of that vision I was talking about earlier in the show that I had seen a couple days ago was from an observer standpoint, watching two people, say it's me and Morgan, or watching five people or 10 people or a village and how I was observing the energy um, movement, which was no interruption or interference. Everyone was flowing their own way freely, and yet there was this joint uh, beehive mind that was kind of also operating as well. Uh, and I went into that because I really feel like that this is where we're at. Um, but it does take, I think, some self introspection, some quiet and silence,
Hmm.
whether you're living with 100 people or one or nobody. And it doesn't take, you can't measure by linear time, but to take some time to just sit with whatever's going on. Because for me, the third energy, regardless of fluctuations or cycles or whatever, has been, to me, it's been more and more obvious that the work I did, the work that we did, is being, we're reaping what we sowed times 10 or times 100 or to the 12th power or to on steroids. I mean, like there's some kind of, but it's a bit scary to take these steps, um, because they're not conventional, they're not conformist, and I don't know why that would even be a concern, because nothing we've done for the last 12 plus years, any of us, some of us 20 or 30 years, has been conformist. Like I'm sure you don't have like your friends that are the soccer moms, for lack of a better word, that you meet through your kids and so on school, where you have these conversations.
Um, you know, here and there, but it's starting. That's like maybe that's what this time is asking for us to like get brave enough to have these conversations with all the people. But yeah, no, not quite like this. But there are,
No, I get
we're
it.
finding each other too, though. There are people, there are
Yeah, I
more
agree.
people
No, I agree. And I
around.
think it's possible. I'm only speaking from my own perspective, which is skewed, that over the next 6 months or so, which is weird because it's that same period you're talking about, the corridor containing the two corridors, you know what I mean? Uh, that, like I said, like a corkscrew, energetically going into a nexus point and all the way to the bottom and then coming back out. Like, and to what you were saying, is that's why I brought it up, is that almost like we go within ourselves, and it could be a couple too, it could be group, a family unit, and we go into our true presence and nature, etc., and then we're going to come out. And that what you're talking about, I feel, a lot of people have talked about that in their own channels over the years, and yeah, that feels right. That feels right. But everything's got to be cleaned up. Everything's got to be pure, and it's not like a pious statement. It's just like, hey man, if you want to play in this level of light frequency range, you're going to have to you know you're going to have to shed a few things, whatever it may be. I can see the writing on the wall. Yeah. Well,
Thanks,
it's
Todd. This was a great day to
yeah,
talk to you. Thanks to
yeah,
everyone who's tuning in
yeah,
with us live or
yeah,
catching us on replay.
yeah,
Nice
yeah.
to
We
be
should.
in your field again, Sology.
Is that what this is? I don't even know what this is.
I don't know.
No, it's been fantastic. I don't care. It's just no, but we'll see what happens. And yeah, it's been really nice talking to you. I really I'm glad that you accepted my short notice offer, and I hope we can do this again maybe next month. I think I've always felt like people need to hear what you've got to say. Um, I think it's part of the new soul science that came out of these last 12 or 13 years. Many people having, certain particular specific intel to share. So yeah, but yeah, best to your family. Don't get too cold. Don't get caught in a blizzard when you go up there chasing that eclipse.
Well, Elsa's gonna do what Elsa's gonna do.
Ain't that the truth? Take
Thank you,
care.
everyone.